Have you ever noticed that some people don't just leave? They disappear, and sometimes they only realize what they lost when it's gone. Today, I want to talk about how avoidants, those people who struggle with intimacy, handle losing the best thing they ever had, and why understanding this can actually change the way you approach love. Avoidants are complicated. They're the ones who often push you away, guard their hearts, and act like they don't care. But here's the thing. Losing someone who truly saw them, someone who brought out the best in them, shakes them to the core. They won't usually chase. They won't write a dramatic letter or declare their feelings openly. Instead, they retreat into themselves and reflect, often silently. This isn't because they're cold or heartless. It's because intimacy scares them. But the loss forces them to confront something they've been avoiding all along, the depth of their own emotions. And if you watch closely, you'll notice changes, tiny but telling. Their way of handling loss is quiet, internal, and sometimes transformative. So, if you've been in a relationship with someone avoidant, or you've ever wondered how they process regret, here's what usually happens. When avoidants experience loss, the first thing you'll notice is that they rarely react in ways that the people around them expect. There's no dramatic outburst, no immediate frantic attempts to contact the person they've lost. Instead, their response is deeply internalized, almost invisible. They retreat into themselves, into a quiet space where they replay every interaction, every conversation, and every moment they shared. Unlike those who process loss externally, through friends, conversations, or visible displays of emotion, avoidants analyze and dissect their feelings privately. This internal reflection is their way of making sense of what happened, of understanding both their own actions and the dynamics of the relationship. It may look like nothing is happening on the surface, but internally their mind is working tirelessly. They are revisiting the past with a magnifying glass, noticing subtleties they overlooked while they were involved in the relationship, and gradually piecing together the emotional puzzle. This process can be painstaking because avoidants are not naturally comfortable with deep emotional exploration. They tend to push away feelings that feel overwhelming, so when they are forced to confront the emptiness left by someone important, it triggers a kind of internal reckoning. They start questioning why they pulled away, why they resisted intimacy, and what part of their own fears may have sabotaged something meaningful. It's not always a linear process. One moment they might feel numb, detached, or indifferent. The next, they're flooded with memories that make them reconsider the decisions they made. What's remarkable is that even though they don't openly express their grief, they often emerge from this internal reflection with new insights about themselves. They begin to notice patterns in their behavior, recognizing moments when their avoidance was a defense mechanism rather than a reflection of their true feelings. Because avoidants think deeply and privately, this internalized reflection allows them to confront truths about themselves in a way that is both subtle and profound. They may not call, text, or try to get back together immediately, but their mind is fully engaged in processing the loss. This quiet reflection can feel invisible to others, but it is intense and thorough. It's their way of taking ownership of their part in the relationship, and it's the first step toward any form of emotional growth. Even if they never outwardly acknowledge it, the loss leaves an imprint, shaping how they approach connection and intimacy in the future. One of the most fascinating things about avoidance is the way they only come to truly recognize the value of something after it's gone. While they are in the relationship, they often have a hard time fully appreciating what they have in front of them. This isn't because they don't care. It's because intimacy makes them uneasy. They may take for granted the patience, the loyalty, or the emotional depth of the person who stands by them, often distracted by their own need for space or their fear of being overwhelmed. But once that person leaves, the perspective shifts dramatically. The void they leave behind becomes impossible to ignore, and suddenly the qualities that were once background noise now appear in sharp relief. Every act of kindness, every word of reassurance, every moment where someone truly understood them begins to hit differently. The avoidant can't escape the realization that what they had wasn't ordinary, it was exceptional, rare even. This recognition often comes in the form of reflection, almost like a mirror being held up to their past. They begin to replay memories, not just for nostalgia, but with the acute awareness of what those moments meant. They notice the sacrifices the other person made, the times they showed up even when the avoidant wasn't easy to love, and the patience they extended despite repeated pushbacks. There's a subtle shock in this recognition, a sense that they allowed something irreplaceable to slip through their fingers. This is not about dramatic remorse expressed through social media posts or public declarations. It's a quiet, sometimes painful acknowledgement that they underestimated the depth of what they were given. What makes this process particularly striking is that it can challenge their habitual defenses. Avoidants often pride themselves on their independence, their emotional self-sufficiency, and their ability to maintain control. But the absence of someone who truly mattered strips away those layers of control. They begin to see that some connections cannot be replaced or replicated. Even if they try to rationalize it, telling themselves they were too busy or not ready, there's a part of them that can't deny the truth. They lost someone extraordinary, and it's a loss that resonates deeply. This moment of clarity can be transformative. It forces them to confront the fact that the very things they were afraid of, the vulnerability, the closeness, were the same things that made the relationship remarkable. And in that realization, even if unspoken, there's a quiet recognition of both the love they had and the regret of letting it go. When it comes to avoidance, regret is rarely loud or performative. You won't see them storming in with confessions, posting about their feelings, or demanding a second chance. Their experience of regret is quiet, subtle, and almost entirely internal. It's a slow burn rather than a sudden flare-up. The absence of the person they lost forces them to confront choices they once justified or overlooked. For someone who's used to avoiding emotional discomfort, this is not easy. They may have built walls for years, rationalizing their distance with explanations about needing space, independence, or freedom. But the loss exposes a truth that no rationalization can erase. They allowed someone invaluable to slip away, and that realization carries weight. Avoidants often experience regret as a mixture of longing and introspection. It doesn't always surface immediately. Sometimes it creeps in gradually, triggered by small reminders, a shared song, a familiar smell, a place you used to go together. These triggers can awaken memories that feel bittersweet, a reminder of both the connection they had and the part of themselves that resisted it. Even if they never reach out, these moments are shaping their internal narrative. They begin to assess the role they played in the ending, acknowledging behaviors they might have previously excused. Every push, every withdrawal, every emotionally unavailable moment becomes something they revisit with new perspective. In their solitude, the avoidant confronts the patterns that kept them from fully engaging, and the realization of what they lost becomes a quiet, haunting presence. Interestingly, this kind of regret rarely manifests as desperation. Avoidants tend to resist vulnerability, so even if they wish they could turn back time, they may hold themselves back, afraid of exposing themselves emotionally. Instead, the regret often leads to subtle behavioral shifts. They might become more reflective in future relationships, slower to push people away, or more aware of the emotional needs of those around them. It's a slow, almost imperceptible recalibration. You may never see the internal processing, but it's happening, and it shapes how they move forward. The key to understanding avoidant regret is recognizing that it's deeply personal and internalized. It's not about the need to win someone back immediately. It's about confronting a truth they once avoided. They lost someone remarkable, and it was their own avoidance that made it possible. In that quiet acknowledgement, even without words or actions, there's an unmistakable emotional honesty that speaks volumes about their inner growth and their understanding of the cost of their own patterns. Even after losing someone significant, avoidants rarely show vulnerability in the ways most people expect. Their natural instinct is to maintain control over their emotions, to mask the intensity of what they feel, and to preserve the image of composure. They may feel regret, longing, or even a deep sense of loss, but expressing it openly is a challenge. Vulnerability for them is inherently risky. It requires a surrender of the defenses they've spent a lifetime building. So even when they're aware of what they lost, they often avoid direct confrontation or confession. Instead, they internalize those feelings, holding them close, tucked away behind a calm exterior. On the surface, it might seem like they've moved on, but beneath that facade, they are navigating a storm of emotion that they are reluctant to expose. This resistance to vulnerability often leads to indirect expressions. They may show subtle signs of change in behavior, a quieter attentiveness in the people they meet afterward, or a more careful consideration of the emotional consequences of their actions. But they rarely, if ever, articulate the depth of their feelings. They may wish to, they may even imagine it in their mind endlessly, yet the words don't leave their lips. Part of this is fear of rejection, fear of appearing weak, and fear of reopening old wounds. For avoidants, emotional exposure feels like stepping off a cliff without knowing if there's anything solid below to catch them. The struggle is intensified by their desire for independence. Avoidants often equate vulnerability with losing autonomy, and the thought of being emotionally dependent is uncomfortable. Even in the wake of loss, they resist showing how deeply affected they are, because doing so would feel like surrendering a piece of themselves. What they do instead is quietly process the pain, reflecting on what went wrong and what they could have done differently. Their regret exists in this private, almost sacred space, where they can confront it safely without risking judgment or emotional exposure. What's remarkable about this pattern is that it demonstrates both strength and limitation. The ability to sit with discomfort privately, to process feelings without external validation, is a testament to their resilience. Yet it also keeps them from fully reconciling the past, because true healing often requires acknowledgement, conversation, and openness. Their fear of vulnerability creates a tension between understanding what they lost and expressing it, leaving them in a delicate balance of emotional containment. In the silence of their hearts, avoidants experience a profound struggle. They recognize the depth of the loss, yet they remain cautious, protective, and ultimately reserved in how they navigate that truth. One of the most interesting aspects of how avoidants handle loss is that despite all their defenses and reluctance to show emotion, losing someone significant can actually spark personal growth. It doesn't happen overnight, and it rarely comes with fanfare, but the absence of someone they truly valued forces them to confront patterns they may have ignored for years. When they realize that the person they lost was extraordinary, it becomes impossible to maintain the same level of emotional detachment they once prized. Suddenly, the very strategies that help them feel safe, pulling away, avoiding vulnerability, staying in control, also reveal themselves as the things that prevented them from fully experiencing a deep, meaningful connection. In that recognition lies the seed of change. The growth doesn't always look dramatic to the outside world. Avoidants are unlikely to post about self-improvement or announce newfound emotional awareness. Instead, it's subtle. They may begin to notice how they engage with others differently, how they respond to intimacy with more caution, but also more consideration. They may start questioning why they push people away or why they avoid confrontation, slowly peeling back layers of their own defenses. This is often a deeply introspective process where they analyze not just the relationship they lost, but the ways in which they contributed to its challenges. It's uncomfortable, but it's also transformative. The loss becomes a mirror, reflecting back patterns they might have otherwise ignored. In many cases, this period of self-reflection changes how avoidants approach future relationships. They might not immediately act on the lessons they've learned, but the awareness is there. They become more conscious of the impact of avoidance, more attentive to signs of emotional needs, and more willing to tolerate discomfort in order to maintain closeness. It's not that they suddenly abandon their boundaries, they still need space, but they begin to understand that connection, vulnerability, and emotional availability are not weaknesses. They are necessary components of meaningful love. What's remarkable is that growth emerges from loss, not from fear or manipulation. The avoidant isn't motivated by guilt or by the desire to regain the lost person. They are motivated by the realization of what they missed and the understanding that repeating the same patterns could lead to similar heartbreak in the future. In this way, losing the best thing they ever had becomes a catalyst. It forces them to examine themselves, to confront uncomfortable truths, and to slowly learn that intimacy, though scary, can be both enriching and transformative. Even in silence, the lessons of loss take root, shaping not only who they are, but also who they can become. So what can we take away from all of this? Losing the best thing you've ever had isn't just about the other person. It's about reflection, growth, and understanding ourselves in ways we never thought possible. Avoidants may not chase, they may not confess, and they may not show their pain outwardly, but deep inside, the loss leaves an imprint. It challenges their patterns, nudges them towards self-awareness, and, in its own quiet way, teaches them the value of connection, intimacy, and emotional courage. And if we can learn to recognize these patterns, not just in them, but in ourselves, we can approach relationships with more patience, more clarity, and more love. Thank you all so much for taking the time to listen and reflect with me today. I hope this conversation has given you insight into human behavior, into the complexities of attachment, and into the silent ways people grow through love and loss. Your presence here matters, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to share these ideas with you. Remember, relationships are messy, beautiful, and sometimes painful, but every experience is a chance to understand ourselves and others better. So, go forward with curiosity, compassion, and courage. Thank you again, and I hope your journey in love, loss, and growth continues to teach you more than you ever imagined.